later. But, and then more to what you're talking about is there are a lot of people who don't like organized religion for whatever reason. Maybe it spurned them, maybe they don't like the structures, but they really want to engage with the universe on that experiential level. And I do that. I go out of my way to enjoy the universe and to connect with it spiritually, you know, lots of quote marks here. But I personally have made the choice to not confuse my experience, my spiritual experiences, with propositional data about the universe. And I think that's a very common mistake, is that we have these experiences and then we infer from them all these amazing claims about the universe. And I think maybe some of the people that you're talking about aren't doing that. Maybe some of them are not, we're just saying, I don't know what this is, but I'm very spiritual, and I don't really see a problem with that. I think I don't know is the correct answer to almost every question, and it's usually not the one we give. Yeah?
Yeah, how would you define then your idea of sacred as a spiritual atheist?
The idea of sacred?
Your idea of sacred.
Oh, my idea of sacred. Well, I would, all these terms are too confused.
Just a footnote, I do see your passion in this, so I just want to see if we could highlight that. It's very interesting, so we'll talk about that.
One problem is that all of these words are already confused enough, so I wouldn't want to add my own definition to the dialogue. We could just go with the existing definitions that are out there. But, I mean, there's so many things I could say about that, but sacred and spirituality and all these things, these are words that are really core to who we are as human beings and how we experience the universe. And a lot of atheists will have seen the damage that that has done by that translation that I talked about from supernatural or spiritual or sacred experience into outrageous claims about the universe. And that's done a lot of harm and maybe interrupted the progress of science. But I think that as human beings, we do need to hang on to some kind of sacred or spirituality just to function as human beings. Now, maybe in 100 years, they'll have finished neuroscience and finished artificial intelligence, and we won't exist as human beings and we'll exist as computer programs or something like that, maybe 200 years. And then at that point, the spirituality and the sacred may not be as relevant. But as human beings, as Homo sapiens, the sacred is a core part of our existence, and I embrace it. I love the things that are sacred to me, like just the amazingness of the universe, or all these kind of things that are sacred to me. I just don't want to infer unjustifiably from that. But yeah, I think the sacred, we can't really get away from it as this species. So the way to do it is to tame it so that we're not letting it get out of hand and go on to all these claims about who God told us to kill and everything like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're saying that sacred is something that's like Homo sapien, like it's a part, it's innate of us, but isn't it more that's like socially ascribed? Like it's from your upbringing and stuff like that. So if someone was brought up that they're completely atheist and they're told there's no such thing as spirituality, they would have no belief or any type of like background into that. So isn't it like you're saying that like sacred, isn't it more socially constructed? Or you're saying that it's hardwired into us?
Well, those are both empirical questions that we may get better data about later. But as far as I can tell from my brief, this is not my field, but from my brief reading of the literature, is that it does seem that psychologically and through anthropological data and sociological data as well, there is something very important to almost every human being that exists in the sacred. But also, obviously, we are social creatures. That's the main thing that we are. And so these organizing ourselves around things that a particular group calls sacred may be a very good way to get together and laugh and tell jokes and everything. So, yeah.
Have you ever had a religious experience? And if you have, how would you explain that as an atheist who doesn't believe in a religion or a higher being?
Excellent question. I was a Christian for 21 years, a charismatic one, so I had lots of religious experiences. I had prophetic visions as a Christian. One particularly vivid one was my family. We were very poor, lower class, below the poverty line or whatever, and we needed a car, and we didn't have any money for a car. And so I had a prophetic vision. I prayed to God. We all sat around the table and prayed to God, and I had a prophetic vision of a maroon minivan driving down the highway from it was like a shot angle like this up at the wheels. I can still see it. And as it turned out, 3 months from then, somebody gave us a maroon minivan that we drove for the next 6 years. So I had prophetic visions. I also had very experiential, supernatural experiences of God, where one time, for example, I was standing in church in the rows, and the worship band was playing, and I was standing there, and I was a fairly shy person at that time, maybe 15, 16 years old, and I felt God nudging me to, hey, you should humble yourself before me right now. And I was like, all these people around? What do you want me to do? And I couldn't move. And I knew that I had to do something, but I couldn't move. And then I asked God for peace, and I prayed to God, just give me your peace, God. And I put Jesus in my mind, this idealized version of who Jesus is, and I felt this peace just rush over my entire body. And then I was fine, and I walked out of the aisle, and I walked up to where this big cross is on the front of the church, and I bowed down before the cross, prostrated myself completely in the middle of the church, which was very uncomfortable for me at the time because I was not a gregarious person, or I wasn't a show-off either. And so I was very embarrassed by all this, but I just kept putting Jesus before my mind. And I bowed down before the cross, and I had my head just buried in there in the floor, and was just worshiping God and thanking Him for the gifts that He gave me. And I don't know, maybe 15 minutes later, I looked up, and the worship band, half of them weren't playing. Instead, they were kneeling before the cross. They had just, I guess, followed my step. And then I looked behind me, and the whole aisle was filled with people prostrated before the cross. And I was like, oh. It's a little embarrassing, but can handle it. So, and this was, of course, at the time, I was like, wow, God is really moving amongst us today. This is a special day. God is really revealing Himself to me. So how do I explain that without reference to a supernatural being? The best answer, like I said before, is I don't know. Another answer that comes from just preliminary research in psychology and all of those things are, first of all this data about assuming agency where none is needed. There's the simple fact of coincidences. Coincidences happen all the time necessarily because everything is happening all the time. There's also just probably more important or most important is the data that comes from psychology about the fact that if you believe that this is going to happen, you can make it happen to yourself. You really can. And this is why we see exactly that kind of supernatural experience in religions all over the world, including religions that all the other religions think are false. So if there was like one God who actually existed, you might expect to see these supernatural experiences with that religion and then not so much with all the others. But if they're happening everywhere, it seems to be something that's basic to our human condition. Now, the way that it was explained to me why everybody has religious experiences is that ours are from God and everybody else's is from Satan. You can say that. That's logically possible, but I just don't see any reason to accept that conclusion. That seems like a real big stretch. And there's just no reason for me to say, why isn't mine a demon and the Muslims have the right God? So yeah, my answer is I don't really know. But you got to follow up?
No.
Okay.